Mike's still on the phone.
Thank you.
Oh no, like.
We're sorry our show is interrupting your phone call, Mike. Did you buy the new insurance?
No, but that was the hospital about instructions.
Oh yeah, Mike's getting a
Shoulder replacement.
shoulder replaced. He's going to be a cyborg next week.
Oh, you're gonna be a cyborg. Well, you'll have super strength and you'll be able to fight crime like a bionic arm.
Exactly.
Oh. Actually, that sucks, but
it'll be a cold arm to match his cold heart. Just joking. Although he is a little cold right now, it would appear.
It's snowing outside.
It's snowing in Colorado where he is.
Oh yeah, I bet Colorado is cold.
So, Mike,
Sometimes.
do you want to introduce our
Sure.
guest here?
Irene, or Rini, as she sometimes goes by, burst upon the scene working for Marvel, where she has illustrated Silk, Deadpool, Venomverse, Superhero Adventures, Seasons Beatings, Marvel Superhero Mealtime Mayhem, Marvel Rising, and Squirrel Girl. And she's tried her hand at a lot of other characters too. She's drawn Gwenpool and Venom. But like many of us who are in the industry, she has left to crowdfund her own books. Her book is called Fiendish. It's outstanding. I recommend it. The second book is at the printer now, or is it printed?
Oh, it's not at the printer yet, but we'll be fulfilling this summer. The
That's
campaign
great.
is still live.
Oh, cool.
Why don't you start by telling us how you got into Marvel?
So I went to school for sequential art actually. So I studied comics and also animation, and so that's actually my bachelor degree. It wasn't really my goal per se to work for Marvel. I just wanted to do comics because I grew up in Asia and I grew up with mostly manga and manhwa and comics in Asia. And when I was growing up, this was before the MCU. We didn't have any comics from the U.S. And even when I did move to the U.S. for art school, I was kind of more interested in the indie scene or European comics, but really the best bet and the only way that I could see to actually, make a living drawing comics was to work for the big two. So I kind of jumped between working I basically made it so I could work in any industry related to the arts. So I worked in gaming, mobile games, animation, design, and also I would take jobs from Marvel whenever the opportunity arose. And for a short while, I really tried to commit to it around like 2015 to 18, I would say. So about like 3 to 4 years, I actually quit my day job in gaming, which I was making very good money off of, and I worked for Marvel full time. But the pay was so terrible, I actually had to move back into my parents' house overseas. But I really wanted to just do comics for a living. But after 4 years of it, I realized that, well, Marvel wasn't a place for me. My dream was to make my own comics. So that's how Fiendish came about. And I just decided to roll with that. And here we are.
Where did you grow up?
Taiwan.
Your English is flawless.
Oh, yeah, my dad's American, but he moved to Taiwan, and I grew up with my Taiwanese side of the family.
Why did you leave Marvel and crowdfund your own books?
I'm trying to be professional right now and not be too insulting. But basically, I realized that, first of all, I didn't really grow up with superheroes, and it wasn't like my bread and butter. I didn't know, like, I studied, what I could because I did go to school for comics. So I read the classics and, Frank Miller and Watchmen and everything. But, but I think if they had given me series that were in genres that I really did enjoy, because I was always a person that was more interested in high fantasy or crime and high fantasy and action and series like that. And if that was the work that I could get, and I'm not, I really don't. I'm afraid of coming off as like, well, Marvel didn't make me famous, so I'm bitter at them. I'm not. It
Right.
was more than that. It was that I really felt like, even though I was interested in superhero comics per se, that was my main thing. I was willing to give Marvel a chance. I really would have liked to work on, if I had a chance at working on something like The Punisher, or even some like a smaller series that had something similar to The Punisher, those kinds of books, then I would have loved to do that. But I realized after working there a while that not only was I a perpetual fill-in artist, but I was never going to eventually have a chance at drawing a book that I really would enjoy. And I just felt like I shouldn't put up with it, because I'm okay with paying my dues. I'm fine with being a fill-in artist for a few years and working my way up, but I was constantly being put on books that just weren't even my style. Like the samples I did in college were Punisher pages, and
Yeah.
I did a couple of pitches for my senior project, and one of them was like a zombie story, another one was a crime story, and which is the only other thing I'm working on other than Fiendish, but so it was really strange when I got into Marvel. They were putting me on stuff like Gwenpool and Squirrel Girl and Silk, and it just got a little weird because every single series I was put on had a young female lead, and
Yeah.
not that that's a problem, but it was every single series, and it was also YA books. But I'm not a YA person. I like
Yeah.
mature stories. So I just felt like the vibe was really weird, and I wasn't like super aware of the culture war at that point. Eventually, I definitely became aware of it, but I just kind of realized that what would be better for my career and also sanity was to break free and just do my own thing, because I figured it would be better to take my chances while I was still young. And if I failed at doing my own fantasy project, then, well, I would still have a chance to go back in the workforce, and maybe I'd just leave comics entirely and work in gaming or animation, even though I really didn't want to, because I don't think anybody works in comics because they love the money. It's not exactly a lucrative business. I chose comics because this is my main love, and I work in animation and gaming on and off to pay the bills. But that's the reason that I eventually decided to leave Marvel, and thankfully it worked out, and we are where we are, and I met everybody in Comicsgate, and that's why I'm so grateful to everyone here, and I love what we're doing here so much, because what does it say about the mainstream where there was no place for me there? And this is the most supportive place I've seen for the medium of comics in the current landscape.
Well, yeah, and they just, yeah, it's kind of aggravating that they, like you were saying, you kind of like you tick that box of, okay, female artist, so let's stick her on a female, thing, and it's like it's like that's insulting, it's
kind of. And they don't come out and say that, but
right.
I just noticed it after a while, and it was really weird. And I was never really outspoken, I never really, like, I'm not super political, but it was just,
right.
I think because they kind of just assumed that I'm a young female, so they wanted to put me on all the YA books, and they kind of assumed that I was aligned with their, oh my god, what am I doing with my hair? with them regarding like politics. They just assume a lot of things, and I just became really uncomfortable with that, because in my mind, comics should be about merit, and you should have, it should be about like what you fit, your skills.
Did you show them any of your fantasy stuff? I mean, I know you said The Punisher and the other. I didn't know if they actually saw or really knew of your love for fantasy.
I don't know. I've always talked about it. Because it kind of jumped between, like, I have other series as well. I always really like crime, so I think like my samples are Punisher, and there's a crime series. So I think when I was working for Marvel in my early 20s, like the crime pitch I did in college was more prominent. But I didn't really have any fantasy comics to show. But what I did was I was always talking about how much I love George R. R. Martin and Lord of the Rings. And, it's really funny because after I joined Comicsgate, there were some people that I formerly knew from Marvel, or just, the general more woke side of comics, were acting all hurt about about me somehow betraying them. But my thought is, if you were my friend, and if
Right.
our relationship was really on the level where I betrayed you by being friends with, oh no, Ethan Van Sciver, then if you're my friend, you would know that I love fantasy and I wanted to break free, and you wouldn't have put me on all these series that
Right.
didn't fit me. So it's just absurd that they act like this is some great betrayal and they were my best friends ever.
Is Fiendish your first crowdfunding project?
It's actually my second. I did art book in 2019 as a test, just to test out the Indiegogo platform, and I just wanted it to be funded and nothing more. I had like 50 backers, but I just wanted to test it out and see how the platform felt, and it did. It got funded, and I felt like 50 backers. Oh my gosh, that's so much. That's amazing. And then, but I guess it wasn't a comic. Like, I think the art was decent, it was good reception, but still, it wasn't something with a story. So I definitely wasn't expecting the reception that Fiendish got when it did come out. I was expecting to slowly work my way up, like, oh, maybe I'll get 600 backers, and or like, no, not even 600. I was like, oh, I got 50 backers on my art, but maybe I'll get 100 backers on Fiendish 1.
Right.
Maybe I'll get 500 on Fiendish 2. No, absolutely not. Fiendish 2 is at, I think, 1,900 backers right now. So it's I'm very fortunate.
Yeah, and they're willing to pay more for that than they are for like a normal Marvel or DC comic. Even though those are expensive these days.
That's true. But really, I mean, the fact that our fans are willing to take a chance on us, it's amazing to me, and I can't be more grateful. And it's motivating as well. It's
right.
I just always wanted to be somewhere where people love comics, and it was so weird because, and I don't know if you felt this at any point in your career, Mike, but to me, that love for comics and putting the craft first just wasn't there when I was at Marvel, and I didn't feel that until I left it and came over here.
Well, I was fortunate in that I loved the Punisher.
Yeah,
and that was probably my biggest impact in regular comics. But I got to write a lot of other characters too. And I wasn't as good a writer then as I am now, although I'm proud of that stuff. Tell us where Fiendish came from.
I wonder how many people will get this. It basically was inspired by the tabletop games I play. So I play a lot of Pathfinder and you play D&D. Yeah, so you totally know what I'm talking about. Yeah, we just talked about this. So Pathfinder is basically like a spin-off of D&D. So I play a lot of that, and that's like my only leisurely activity in my entire life. I don't do anything else other than work and draw and stream, and I'll play Pathfinder sometimes. So I've always really loved fantasy like George R. R. Martin and Lord of the Rings, and I got into European comics after I moved to America. It's I like some series by IDW and Image, and I remember Lock and Key is one of my favorite series created in America. But the main Western style comics I like were from Europe, and I'm a huge fan of Mobius, and I really like Black Sad, and a bunch of other series. I'm currently going through the Elric series, but I never really had an idea for what I wanted to do for fantasy. Strangely enough, I thought I was going to make a crime story when I went independent. So the idea for Fiendish kind of slightly came out of nowhere, but it just materialized out of nowhere. Frankly, one day, when out of like, it's loosely inspired by Pathfinder. Like, I based some of my major characters on characters that I build in Pathfinder, but it's not a complete transcript of like the Pathfinder game I play with my friends. This is a story I designed myself. I made my own magic system, and I built my own world. I have a world map. I created a language because I'm an insane person. So it's definitely my own thing that I use the template of tabletop games as a sort of inspiration for how to create a fantasy world. So I would put it that way.
Are you going to print a glossary?
Yeah, actually, at the back of every book, there is a glossary. So the on the website, Yeah, and I have the whole dictionary on the website. Yeah, there you go. At the back of
Hey,
there. Yeah. So
and
because in every book there's a little bit of the
oh,
constructed
there we go.
language I built is called Ninarsa. So here's the dictionary, and I have the alphabet over here, but here is the glossary. And actually, going forward, I'm just going to have the translations in the gutters because I realize having readers flip to the back is way too much work.
Yeah.
But here's part of the world map that I created. So I have the entire dictionary for Ninarsa on the website because I figured it's fine. I'll just put it out there. It's not like I'm fine with people just knowing it. And because I do it for fun. Like I'm selling the comic, but stuff like the world building, like I just want people to see all of it. It's just something fun that I want to share with people.
What's the website address?
FIENDISHcomic.com. Super easy. Fiendish comic. Yeah, it's I actually did a huge revamp a couple months ago, and I'm super proud of it. It looks really cool, if I may say so myself. I have a free preview of the first 20 pages of chapter 1. I have the world map. I have the list of species, which is basically the races, but I call them species because I'm like it's different than how
Right,
D&D
right.
and, like Tolkien as fantasy treats races, and I don't have elves or dwarves or anything. I created my own fantasy creatures, and I have the dictionary, and I also have a little shop for like merch and stuff because some of the fans wanted it.
Very cool.
Oh.
Are you gonna well, I know you said you play some of this stuff. Have you actually like posted like the any of like the characters or stats or anything like that for the like if somebody wanted to play their own version of the Fiendish world?
Funny enough, the trading cards are
like that. Okay.
are statted out. Ooh, let me show you. Okay, it's right over here. I should have this right. Okay. Yeah, so I have trading cards with every campaign, and I totally stole this idea from some other people, but I just thought having trading cards was here are the ones for my book. Here are the 4 for that came with chapter 1, and they're mostly stretch goals and they're mostly stretch goals, and I have about 4 going on 5 for chapter 2 as well. But on the back of the cards are mini character sheets.
Oh, cool.
And they're adaptable to Pathfinder. There's some abilities are customized and some of the feats are customized. But of course, somebody who really knows these games, you'll be able to adapt those feats and those like specifics for whatever system that you're using. But these stats are pretty self-explanatory. And here's the one for Casimir. So, and of course, as the story progresses, I'm making cards for not just the characters, I'm making cards for magical items and monsters, and eventually the characters will just level up as the story goes. Here's the monster, the demon that they fought in chapter 1, and it's statted out as well if you want to torture your players as a GM. You're welcome.
How did you go about creating like your world and I'm specifically interested in the language and the magic system. Like, how did you come up with those things or develop them?
I just started making up words for the language. I know it's a really bad answer.
You used your imagination.
Yeah, basically. So I was I'm a bit of a nut for ancient history, and especially I'm really into kind of world history around the 800 and 900s, and so for Europe that's like the Viking Age and Tang Dynasty China. But so that's loosely the era that is sort of like a technological level that my fantasy world is based off of. But I was really into the Viking Age for a while. I still am. And so I started out by kind of creating almost a fantasy version of Old Norse. And I downloaded an Old Norse dictionary and started researching the etymology of individual words and tracing their Indo-European roots and all kinds of weird nerdy. So I have way too much time on my hands. Again, I was living with my parents. This is the only reason I had the time to do this. But this was like 5 years ago. So it took time. But it definitely evolved into its own thing over time. At first, it was just like, I'm just going to do my it was like fantasy Old Norse. But then it changed because I started inserting some old words, some sounds from Old Slavic. And then it took on a life of its own. So there's a specific way that words sound in Ninarsa, like that endings often end in U or A, and like the way words are conjugated. And then I came up with the idea that for the writing system, because I speak Mandarin Chinese, and I thought I could do something really unique that a lot of constructed languages, I haven't seen anyone do it in any constructed languages, which is for the writing system, I have both a phonetic system and a logographic system for just like Japanese with kanji and hiragana and katakana.
Right.
That's why you can just write everything phonetically, and that would be like katakana and hiragana, but you can also just write logographs. So for example, for tree, it's not focusing, you can just write one character, and this is leaven, and that's you don't have to spell out leaven, you just write this symbol for tree, and but here are a bunch of other logographs as well, and I'll slowly introduce them bit by bit in every book. So
Cool.
yeah, I just had ideas and threw them out there and figured out what worked.
Did you outline the story before you began writing?
Definitely. I always knew where the story was going, even though it has changed a lot since I launched. Even like when I launched chapter 1, I knew what the story is about. I knew the main mystery, because it is a mystery story. The basis of the story is, it's about Casimir, my main character, who's searching for the truth behind the demons that destroyed his hometown, and it's sort of a revenge story, but also a mystery because nobody knows where these creatures came from. So him and some like-minded friends and companions they're going on a journey and figuring out like what are these weird demons. But so I always knew like where they came from and the entire mystery behind that. But the structure itself and a lot of the specific character development has changed a lot, and especially with chapter 2, I've just been doing a lot of restructuring because this stuff takes time, and I know I took a bit of a risk by planning for something that's not exactly a miniseries. Right now, Fiendish is 9 books, and these are big books, so it's not just 9 small issues. These are at least like 60-page volumes, so at least 9 of these, and that's the main story, and I might have a couple of side stories. So it's a bit of a risk, but I like fantasy that is a little long form, and I think there's not enough people doing series in comic form in America that are like high commitment. This is a long form story, and they do that in Europe, but many. And I've tried to pitch comics to small publishers in the United States before I did crowdfunding, and everybody wanted miniseries, and it bothered me so much. I'm like, of course I can make this a miniseries, but I don't want to. Like, I can condense it and tell it in like 3 issues if I have to. Like, but I think my theory is, well, the reader will only care as much as I do, and I really care. I want to tell it the right way. I want it to be paced. I want to really be able to introduce the characters and get people to know them just like I feel like I know them. So this is the kind of comic that I want to read, so that's what I'm going to create.
Yeah, well,
Does
you
this
have
outline.
Yeah.
Does this outline extend through 9 issues?
Yeah, I have everything planned out. And I've done a couple of really big revamps recently, but everything is planned out. Not to like the dialogue level. A couple of parts I have like, oh, I know this is exactly how a character would say something. But generally it's a prose summary. Right now it's like, I have like this 50-page Word document at like 8-point font. And it's all like every scene is like a different color coded depending on the character's point of view, and it looks like a crazy person wrote it, but yeah, it's all planned out.
Did you do the script before you began drawing?
Yep. And I don't really do a script per se because I knew I was drawing it myself, but I do an outline, and I definitely have it all planned out because even though I'm more trained as an artist, right? And how do I say this? Sometimes I'm a little worried about my abilities as a writer, even though I've gotten pretty good feedback. And I also make a point of showing my friends who are professional writers, and I have an editor now. And like, I want to make sure, I want to get feedback. Even if you're the most brilliant writer in the world, feedback is good. You need a second pair of eyes on what you create. And so I try to get as much of that as possible. But definitely I was paranoid about my project being just another fantasy comic that had great art but a boring story, and I didn't want that. So I definitely have everything planned out from the beginning.
Do the words come to you as you draw the picture?
Like the dialogue?
Yes.
Yeah, mostly. I don't solidify the dialogue until pretty much the very end. So I do, I write a summary of the chapter, and then as I thumbnail, I go from like the summary to the thumbnails, and as I thumbnail, and then I I letter right after thumbnailing, and then I go to inks. So that's how it works.
Do you find your characters turning around and telling you what happens
Yeah.
next?
Oh, I'm sure.
Absolutely. I mean, it makes me sound like a crazy person.
Yeah,
but
get the straight jacket.
I mean, sometimes it feels like that. Yeah, I know some writers don't like viewing their work like that, and they want to view the creative process like they are the lord of what they create. And very much this, I can see, like, I know my influences. I know why I designed a story the way I do. I know, the moral viewpoint that's going into Fiendish and everything, and that obviously that's designed by me. But when we create characters, they're all a part of ourselves plus
Right.
something more. It's like they're a percentage of ourselves and what we want to say. And someone who is self-aware enough at least would be able to understand
Right.
this. And some parts of ourselves that we put into characters are negative, some of them are positive, but eventually they take on a life of their own. I think that's just unavoidable if you spend enough time with them.
If you're a good writer.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose, but I think a lot of it is also if you just take time, because I think, at least for me, because I don't consider myself a great writer, but what I am committed to doing is just taking my time and really revising and being critical of my own work. And I think that is how these characters were really born from. They were born from that process. And when I got to the point where they were speaking to me and they were telling me this is how I think I would act in this scene, then I knew this is right. I knew that's when the scene was a go.
Well, and that's great for you too, because you'll get the expressions and the body language right too, because you know, like, their intent or their opinion, and it's not just like another writer telling you. If you need to get that,
no, it's fine. I'm just muting it. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. But I did want to ask, how many countries are in your thing? Because this is where I'm like, okay, this is a long story, because she has like 50 countries or something in
Fiendish?
Or are they towns?
Let's
in
look
one
at the
in one of
map.
your drawings, you've got like a gazillion different colors and it almost looks like a map. Is that just
right.
I posted species?
Right, I posted. Okay, hold on. So I have my map, but I have other breakdowns of my map that are the ethnicity breakdown, and then I have the country breakdown and the political breakdown.
Yeah, that's where I'm like obsessive compulsive here.
Maybe a little bit. So I wanted to be realistic with my world building as much as possible, reasonably so. So it's not really countries per se. A lot of the areas are like, okay, this is all small settlements or city states, but all these city states this area is generally known as like Valdar or Valdan. And everybody here shares a culture and language, but they're not really unified under a kingdom, which is how a lot of the world was in ancient times. And there are a couple of places that are unified city-states. Like there's a peninsula called Lear. It's like a swampy area that's really hard to, nobody can attack it because it's very insulated. And all the city-states there they're allies, but they're all their own cultural entity, even though they don't are ruled by one king. And then I do have some actual kingdoms like Erisek, and then I have mercantile societies like Drakia, who they're not a traditional kingdom per se, but they have like a merchant prince or merchant princess, and they thrive off trade in the on like ocean trade and stuff. So yeah, I thought a lot about this.
Nerd.
Have you seen Vikings?
Yeah, I have. Yeah. Well, most of it, I think. I stopped watching after a while.
What movies or TV shows and things like that do you like, as far as when it comes to fantasy or crime?
So for crime, my one of my biggest influences, the Ghost in the Shell series. Again, I come from Asia, so a lot of my favorite series are anime. And the Ghost in the Shell TV series, especially Second Gig, but especially the series by Kenji Kamiyama. So the movie is great, the movie from the 90s, that's lovely. But it wasn't really what inspired me. It was the Kenji Kamiyama series, Standalone Complex and Second Gig and Solid Stasis Society, that whole series that really was the first work I saw that solidified in my mind that comics or anime or this general genre of cartooning, like something that was done in a cartooning style that wasn't realistic, wasn't real life. It could be serious, it could be deep, because Ghost in the Shell talks about subjects like man-machine interface, AI, and artificial intelligence, and what happens to people psychologically when they become cyborgs. And also the second game was about international terrorism, and it was very serious, and that made such an impression on me. So that was one of my favorite series for crime, probably. But I also read a lot when I was in middle and high school, not so much anymore, but I used to, and I was like a big fan of Michael Crichton and a bunch of other like crime novels. I read like, well, who's the guy that writes a lot of like lawyer crime novels?
John Grisham.
John Grisham, yes.
Yeah.
I read him all the time in middle school. So.
Yeah. Okay, with such a big world, but also your love of crime, are you thinking about just writing anything and having somebody else draw it?
Yeah, and that might be happening soon.
Ah.
So the main series of Fiendish will always be drawn by me, because I think that's what the fans want. And frankly, I don't really trust anyone else to draw the main series. And it's 9 books. Like, I can do it. This is my job. I'm a trained artist. But I have about 4 side stories planned where I realized that certain chapters were either flashback chapters that were pure character development, and they weren't completely necessary for the main plot, but I really wanted to show them, and I wanted people to see them. So those are smaller chapters, and I'm thinking of breaking off and having other artists draw. So 4 to 5 of those, and maybe there will be more spin-offs in the world of Fiendish. Who knows?
It seems like you kind of you've made it big enough, like you might as well. Is just from me looking, I'm like, man, and just with how long it takes to to create the stuff and for fans to wait in between is can be a challenge. Do you have any tips or tricks or lessons that you've kind of learned from crowdfunding?
Give yourself extra time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the main thing I learned. Anticipate things going wrong, because I didn't anticipate everything going wrong, especially with COVID and 2021 and
paper shortages and all that stuff.
I know. But at the end of the day, like, it's still my campaign, so I have to take responsibility for that. So it's sort of like, well, now I'm giving myself extra leeway. And I think for my next book, I'm going to give myself even more leeway. So you just don't have to be under as much crunch time for fulfillment. And, and some of these things you just have to learn as you go, but because not everyone can plan for you never know how much a book is going to fund. And if you have too many orders, like now I'm hiring somebody to do my fulfillment for me. And that's great, because I can focus on drawing and promoting, and that works out really well, but I didn't have that last time. So I would say that, and also you got to put yourself out there, and I've learned to do that. I think I'm decently good at that, but I know for a lot of creatives, it's a hurdle to get over, to be able to go on streams and talk about your work, or even just make posts on social media and promote yourself, because a lot of creators are, even if they're absolutely amazing at what they do, they're insecure and they don't really like to talk themselves up, but you have to do it. And I think a lot of artists don't have a great business mind, but if you're going to get into crowdfunding, you have to think like a business person. And I believe anybody can train themselves to think entrepreneurially. You just have to have the will to do that.
Yeah. How do you trying to think how to phrase this? But I know a lot of females that are writers and artists, and they have to deal with scumbag male fans. You seem, I will say, you seem to deal with that really well, and I feel like not just that, but in general, you seem to carry yourself pretty well, pretty confident. But I can't. I mean, with the stuff that I don't know. Even if the female is like extremely ugly, it's like these guys just come out of the woodwork, and it's just like it has to be difficult for females, especially if you have a photo or something online and they can see her. They're like, oh, it's a pretty girl. I talked to her, and it's like, and it's just I know a lot of female creatives who are hesitant to do more online and more crowdfunding because they get tired of that crap.
Yeah, well, I don't blame them, to be honest, but I don't know. I don't know if I handle it perfectly per se, but I think just uh, sort of just being honest and putting your foot down. And sometimes you'll tell people that you're not interested and they still don't get it. But to
Right.
be honest, it that has not happened to me very often. I've had a
Yeah.
couple of instances of people not getting it, but the vast majority of people who watch my streams or follow me on Twitter, they totally understand that I'm
Yeah.
here for comics and I can joke around, I can handle raunchy jokes, but I'm here to be a professional and I'm only selling my comics, not anything else.
Yeah. 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 Oh, definitely. Yeah, that's just been something that I've been seeing, especially even just recently when I've been there's different kind of female creatives who've kind of asked me for advice. It's like, but you have to be out there more on social media. I know it's a pain. I know you have to deal
Yeah.
with all the other crap, and you have to be careful about what you say and everything to a certain extent.
Oh
But
yeah. I guess that part is I just kind of give it up because I'll just
yeah, I
say
know.
things and
Yeah,
people will take it like it's sexual, but it's not. I just like don't care. I'll just be like, you guys take it however you want because
right,
it's the
right,
internet. And I think part of it is well, first of all, guard your privacy, and that's something that
right.
I tried. I think I was pretty good about that, but I wasn't perfect at the beginning. But definitely now, like I don't no pictures of my family online, no pictures of my
Right.
house, and like I'm very private. Use a PO box, even if you don't think you have a big fan base. You never know where the
Oh
crazies
yeah.
are. So just be careful and guard your privacy. And I think also another level of is you just got to brush things off. Like be aware
Yeah.
when things cross those boundaries. Like you need to have very clear boundaries. And if people cross that, don't be afraid to just shut it down. But also if it's not serious and it like people will joke around, they'll make raunchy jokes. You have to just be able to
Yeah.
take it on the nose.
Yeah, the internet seems to bring out the worst in a lot of people.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Just that anonymity.
oh,
Yeah.
I developed some rules.
Uh-oh.
oh. I
For
understand.
yeah, no, wait, let me read them to you. Guys think they're pretty good.
Is this just the cowboy code?
No, this is not the cowboy code.
The cowboy code.
Oh, number 1, no sarcasm. Number 2, no ad hominem. Number 3, be brief. Number 4, keep your sense of humor. Number 5, and most importantly, know when to quit.
Like to like
Mm,
walk away from a conversation or
Yeah,
whatever?
just don't respond.
Yeah.
I don't like to
that's
block
true.
people, but I will if I have to, if they're
Yeah.
That's
being
true.
real.
I think with online arguments, especially because of the sort of situation we're in with it's a culture war, call it what it is. Sometimes you have to pick your fights, and like
Yeah.
I do worry about my online presence being too much about making fun of like
Right.
bad entertainment. It's like, well, the Lord of the
People love
Rings
that
show is
stuff.
so bad. They do, but I also don't want my feed to be too much of that. I want to
Right.
like sell my comic most of the time or promote other people's comics. So I try to balance it out. But I think it also depends on your own comfort level. Everybody's different. A lot of people like fighting all day, and some
Right.
people hate it. They don't like argue on Twitter at all. So do whatever is comfortable for yourself. And also, I really like what you said about walking away. You have to know when to quit, and it's fine to just not respond. Sometimes it's better for your sanity. Don't like lose sleep over it.
What I will, just because Mike has brought it up a couple times, and I try to be a little bit more, I try to play a little bit more towards the center, but I do agree that it sure seems like, especially in the comic and entertainment, like any kind of stuff, it seems like we're like you're having to choose sides, and you're pretty much okay, are you on the right or the left? Because nobody cares if you're in the middle. Like they want to
Pretty much.
know if you're part of their side. I don't, me personally, I don't think that's very helpful, because one of my biggest complaints, um about, and I would have the same complaint if it was like all like right oriented, is the thing I hate is you just see, because Marvel and DC are so left, and a lot of the stuff that comes out of there, you just see these caricatures of right leaning characters, and different things. And like I got, and I said it on here a couple times, when they did the Captain America, and they did, which I will say, as a art and design fan, I think the newer Captain America suit design is pretty freaking awesome. But but when I read the comic, and they were basically inferring that all border agents are demon worshippers, I'm like, are you kidding? And then they had him, the Captain America, on a plane. And there was a guy, complaining about, I don't want to sit next to this guy, or this gay couple that's here. And so Captain America punches him. I'm like, is this the message that we want to send? But honestly, in a lot of ways, I feel like that is the message that Marvel and DC have sent to anybody that.
And what's the first rule of writing?
Beat up.
You've heard me say that.
Disagree with.
Yeah, beat up anybody you disagree with. Oh, wait, Mike, you're muted.
Mike, you're muted.
Yeah, I did that because Anne's doing the garage story. The first rule is it's your job to entertain.
Right.
Right.
Entertainment is job one. And it seems obvious to us. And yet, that seems to elude the big two.
Yeah, it's childish to only view, like she said, like you have to, like, not only, because the older storytelling, which you rarely see these days, unfortunately, you have characters with different worldviews. You had in the same stories, you had, that were not, just totally demonized, but you'll have an atheist working with a religious person. You'll have you'll do different, and it was fine. They could believe differently, but still treat each other with respect, or, just say, kind of agree to disagree, but still be nice about it. And it's like, man, that's just gone out the window. And it's a shame, especially from a storytelling point of view, because you should be able to have characters that are that way. And you shouldn't have to feel like you have to put your characters in boxes or make caricatures of them, because it just,
especially if you're doing ultra realistic type stories like Thin Blue Line. And we got a lot of praise from people on the left because Thin Blue Line was so even-handed.
That's great. Cool. That's great. Yeah. And I think that's what's causing the, to the detriment of DC and Marvel. What they're doing is they're presenting a quite extremist view, and right now it's extremist left. And I'm with you, JS. I don't particularly care if a story reflects my own politics, as long as it's even-handed and as long as it's not propaganda, because there is writing entertaining. Exactly. As long as, like, there's being political and there's being propagandistic, and those are two very different things. And when you only present one side as this is the almost like religiously, morally correct, only people who have these politics are right, everybody else is evil, that's extremist. That's not entertaining. That's propaganda. Propaganda isn't storytelling. It's not entertaining. And that's what they're doing right now.
That's right.
Yeah.
And the same thing is afflicting movies, especially Disney and wrestling with Marvel. And Warner Brothers, they killed that Batgirl movie. It cost $90 million to make. It was ready to go. And they looked at it and they said, we're just going to lose money on this. So we're going to cut our loss. You know about
that.
How bad?
Right? I do. I'm like, we all wanted to know how bad it really was. Someday
it'll surface eventually.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Everything bubbles up to the surface of the swamp sooner or later.
Well, it's and I mean, really, and because I'm kind of into that side of stuff. I mean, most of I can totally, like, a lot of people were like, oh, just put it out there and everything. I was like, but you don't realize, like, when it's Hollywood studios, they spend as much or more on advertising than they spent on the movie.
That's right.
So they have to make twice as much as they spent, at least, to break even. Mm-hmm. And to cut the bleeding off before they had to do twice as much as that in advertising. Like for me, like like you were talking about, as a business, thinking from a business, like, how many millions do you want to sink in advertising this that is not going to do well, and really kind of tarnish the brand or whatever, And I mean, and that's I just wish that's the thing that frustrates me about comics too, is that they've made this kind of anti-financial decision to alienate more than half of their audience, and then they want to bitch about it. And it's like and you have editors and other people like going online and saying, yeah, and even headlines saying, yeah, this is not for you, this is not for cisgen
Right.
men, this is not for, and it's like, why would you even say that? Why are you just throwing money away?
Well,
It's
these
just,
guys are just being incredibly bigoted, and these people
yeah,
claim to be anti-sexist and anti-bigotry, but not everything that comes out of their mouth is bigoted. It's amazing.
yeah,
And
But I think this would not be as bad if they were doing their own thing and creating books that were aimed at, I don't know, teenagers
right,
on
that's
their
true.
own. And they were saying, well, I don't want white men reading our books. But what they're doing is coming into superhero comics that have always been aimed at a male audience, and they're telling the old audience that we don't want you anymore, and on top of that they're constantly insulting them, and they're wondering why they're losing money.
yeah,
It's much worse in the world of film, where you have actors and actresses who just can't keep their big yap shut.
Uh-huh.
Years ago, when they had the studio system, actors Audrey Hepburn, Cary Grant, they conducted themselves with decorum and dignity. They wouldn't dream of
yeah,
insulting their audience over anything.
Yeah, it's strange. I think celebrity culture kind of broke
Yep.
America in a way.
Yep.
It's almost like, well, when celebrities became just about somebody that got a lot of attention, and our entertainment became an attention economy, I like to say, instead
right,
of which absolved celebrities and any famous people of actually having to set a good example in any way. They were just there to get attention, and because they were rich and they were privileged and they live in Hollywood now, it got to their heads. They think they're better than everybody, so they act like that. I think they can run their mouths, and they think they're smarter than anyone, when really they're not. They're just good at playing pretend, and they're pretty, and that's about it. So a little humility would benefit a lot of people, but we don't have that anymore.
That's why you got to admire celebrities who do good works and don't advertise it. Like Keanu Reeves. Every story I hear is he's a very soft-spoken, self-effacing man that does good deeds for people, and he doesn't advertise it.
That's great. Yeah, Keanu Reeves. And those are the celebrities that I do admire. They're either they care about the art. They're actors like
right,
Viggo Mortensen, or directors like Guillermo del Toro, who they don't play the Hollywood game. They're all about the craft. Or they're actors like Keanu Reeves or Johnny Depp, who really they're humble. They just care about they try to keep a low profile until these
yeah,
women come into their
That's
lives,
funny.
and they do charity work, but they don't brag about it.
That's
And
right.
that's because, like, people who really are giving and generous and caring, they don't feel the need of virtue signal about it, and
That's right.
which says a lot about this virtue signaling culture we have, and a lot of these people on Twitter.
well, it's also interesting to me, especially like you said, which I would be interested to hear your take on it. But it is interesting to hear like how many Americans hate America, where so many people that come from other countries trying to get here, or risk dying. I live in Florida. We still have people coming in tiny rickety boats from Cuba to
Oh
get to
boy.
America right now. I mean, just risking their lives in these little rickety boats. Sometimes they're even like leaking and stuff, and it's like, to make that trip through ocean waters is just to get here, and then for us to and then for people in America to just piss all over it, and I mean, it's kind of disrespectful of to not see what the other people who are seeing that come here. Obviously, we have problems. Obviously, there's bad things that have been done, but it's like the glass half full, glass half empty. I mean, it's you have both. It depends on how you're viewing it. The grown-ups can see both.
Every day
Mhm.
I see another news story from emigres who came from communist countries, from North Korea and China, and from Eastern Europe, warning us that the same thing is happening here that happened in their own country, and they see it because they left those countries because of what was happening.
Yeah, well, they're absolutely right. What's happening in America is it's not exactly the same.
Right.
History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes, and it's not. Hello,
Hold on,
I'm
I
from
gotta write that down. I gotta
Taiwan.
steal that for a second.
Go ahead. I didn't come up with it. I forgot who did. But what a lot of woke culture right now is, which is also, I just want to say, is that's not liberal culture. It's
Right.
not even progressivism. Most of my real life friends are liberals and progressives. Actually, like
Right.
pretty much all the conservatives I hang out with online.
Right.
But what specifically woke ideology, which is basically a secular religion in its roots, and this is research. There are academics who have researched where this ideology comes from. It's a bit sort of unholy amalgamation of postmodernism and Marxian ideology, not straight up Marxism, but Marxian theory. And what they're doing is they're taking the Marxist principle of, well, you have an oppressor and you have an oppressed class, and there's a class war. They realized that didn't work economically. We weren't able to achieve the worldwide Marxist utopia and overthrow the bourgeoisie in the 20th century. So what we're going to do now is we're going to apply those same principles to race and gender and say that there are people who are racially and gender-wise, they're the oppressors, and everybody else, they're the proletariat, and they need to overthrow this other, the bourgeoisie. Except that's bigoted as hell, and it doesn't work, and that's also not reality.
Yeah.
This all comes down to the left's failure to see people as individual human beings.
Correct. Yes, absolutely. And like you said, that America is not perfect, and you're right. But in my view, coming from overseas and being a bit of a history buff, and I pay way more attention to international politics than American politics, and America's sins, so to say, are no worse than any other countries. Every country has had bloodshed.
Right.
Every country has been touched by colonialism, has had massacres. It's been horrible and all over the world, everywhere. But what America does have is it has reformed, it has changed, and it has tried to be better. And because at the core of its ideals are that every person should be treated equally. And it's taken a long time to build up to that, but that is our central motivation. And that is what's on, that's the building on the shining hill that we should all be looking towards. And that's why so many people risk their lives to come to America. And that's why I like coming here, because it's an individualist culture where there are opportunities and you really can make it if you have the ability and have a little bit of luck, but you can work hard, and if you have the talent, you can make it. And I'm kind of proof for that, I like to think. And people don't realize when they're born and raised here that that's not how it is in the rest of the world. The vast majority of the rest of the world, you cannot rise up. There is real oppression. There are real disadvantages, and they're so ungrateful for what they have here. It's rather disgusting.
Oh yeah. Because I've I don't know if you saw it. There's a popular book out right now by a lady that escaped North Korea. It was a while. I think she escaped a while ago, but just what she had to go through and the way that she describes like life in North Korea is just, I mean, it's insane. And there's just stuff like that like it's a shame that that people just can't take it and say that there's anything good. I mean, just people, they just
Well, there's an old saying: strong men create good times create weak men, and weak men create harsh times. And that's where we're at.
Yeah.
I think I follow a couple of biologists and professors. You might know about them, Heather Hying and Brett Weinstein, who got roped up in this whole woke culture thing. And basically, they were teaching at a very progressive university, and because they refused to bow down to racialized, they're liberals themselves who refused to bow down to classic liberals who didn't bow down to these laws or these new policies in the college that were saying, well, basically, what was the rule? All white people should not go on campus one day. And both of them were like, we're not going to do that. And they got canceled and they were forced to leave their jobs. It was appalling. And so they have a YouTube channel. It's lovely. Everybody should follow them. But they do a lot of research on biology and sociology. And they pointed out that basically the more equal a culture is, there's a trend where people look for something to fight for, and they need conflict in their lives. And I do believe it myself, that I think my generation, which is the current problem generation. Let's just face that. It's almost like the civil rights era is over, and they're like women's equality under the law is already here, and it's not like things are perfect, but what the only next step is to either make up new things to fight for, or to push for equity instead of equality. And
It's
basically,
a form of narcissism.
It is right. They don't have anything to fight for, but they want to feel like they're still fighting for something, just like the civil rights era. So they keep on insisting that there's still rampant racism and rampant issues, when a lot of the issues that we have now, some of it is left over from historical inequality, but a lot of it is just humans are different. There is no gender pay gap. Women choose to stay at home with their kids. It's not sexist discrimination. And there are other reasons for, whether you want to call it, education and crime. And all of these problems can be solved with liberalism, with what America already had, which the things we're already working for, not by implementing communism or equity or diversity quotas. That's actually going to make the problem worse, but they don't realize that, because they just want to have something to fight for. They latched onto this ideology that was telling them, well, to be a good person, you have to support equity and, like raising up people who don't deserve it instead of addressing the actual issues. And it's just making everything worse, I think. Because I'm sorry, I'm getting like way too much. but really, it bothers me, because I don't like the framing that if you're against woke culture, then they just don't care about people, or conservatives are just they're all racist, and they don't actually care about like education or racial inequality in the results of education. I don't believe that at all. From getting to know people from all across the political spectrum, I think there are just different solutions. And I think people on the right lean more towards a solution of, well, let's focus on building nuclear families and childhood education, instead of just saying that, well, we need to apply policies like racial quotas, or in Harvard, there was just a successful lawsuit against Harvard where they were docking SAT scores for Asian students.
That's right.
It was racially based. It's appalling. I couldn't believe they're doing this, but it was affirmative action to a ridiculous level. So Asian students were getting docked like something like 140 points on their SAT. Black students got an automatic bonus, and Hispanic students got a smaller bonus. And how insulting is that? That you're raising people up just based on the race, or telling them that they're less deserving just because of their race.
Right. Well, let's be careful here. We don't want to end up on Hannity.
Okay, stop me if I'm getting too into it. But this stuff,
I don't know.
It bothers me.
It might actually help people, but that's and that's. But in all honesty, because I was having this discussion with a buddy of mine today, and we were in. The thing for me is like kind of like what you're saying, like the problem isn't that liberals don't see problems or whatever, but the problems is that the modern left, not the classical liberals, but the modern left is like most people, kind of in a fast food mentality of they're just wanting to treat the symptom and not what's actually causing the things that they're seeing, or whatever the problem is. And that's, but it's hard because the politics, and everybody's always changing positions. So you're always pandering to whoever's going to vote for you, and everybody wants like your votes like now. And it's just like, it's difficult, but
it's it's a lot of pandering, but I do wish things weren't so politicized, and that's why we're all here, because it's spilled over into entertainment and we just can't get away from it. And even people who, I swear I don't follow politics that much. It's just, you can't help but see it now.
No, you can't hide from it. Because they won't leave you alone. And that's the difference between, I say the world's divided into two types of people. Those who just want to be left alone, and those who won't leave them alone. But on that note, let's get back to Fiendish.
Yeah,
when
that's
do you
fine.
expect to be going to the printer?
It should be May. It should be printing in May and fulfilling in June. That is the plan. And the
Great.
progress is coming along well. I have like 12 pages left to ink, so I'm in that crunch time. But the colors are about halfway done, and I have 12 pages out of a 70-page book, and then I have all the other stuff that I'm talking to factories right now. So we're on schedule.
That's
Great.
awesome. That's all. And I will encourage people, anybody which you can give out your social media handles or whatever. But I would encourage people, as great as her stuff looks in color, look at her stuff in black and white. Her pencils and inks are insane. I mean, they're so detailed and everything. I'm like, and it's funny because I love the coloring, but I'm like, man, like I would almost want to buy some of her stuff in black and white because it's like I love like all of that detail in there.
Thank you. Oh, those are the process sketches. I have a little extra content on the back of every book.
Very cool.
Funny you say that because I have been requested by some backers to do an inks only edition, so sort of like an artist edition,
right?
And I don't know how many people would want that, but people have asked for it, so I think I might do like a in between campaign, like in between books. I'll sort of pad the space with an artist edition on top of like supplementals or like an art book or something.
Right.
But yeah. I'm glad that you like the ink.
Oh yeah, and I like. It's not that I don't like the coloring. I do love the coloring. But when I've seen you post like sketches and especially like the pencils and inks, I'm like, oh my gosh, like that detail's like crazy. Like,
thank you.
Yeah,
my colorist is great, but I don't want to just rely on the colorist. I don't want to be one of those inkers that's like, well, let my colorist fix that. I want the inks to look good.
Do you? I did want to ask real quick, and I know Mike's probably got a date or something, but do you spend more time on your pages now that you can do it on your own? I mean, like out of choice.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I take my time basically.
Yeah.
But not always, because I set deadlines for myself. But
right.
Yeah, it's and it's great because I'm so grateful that I can do this and create my own project, not just because this is my dream project and I own it and it just feels so great to have this, but because I'm actually improving it. And because I can take my time with the art and I can experiment.
In the world, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. It is. And like I can because improving takes time, and you can't just be constantly staring a deadline in the face and trying to ram stuff out. Like in some contexts, being under pressure refines you. And I love a challenge. I like doing art challenges and stuff like that, but when you're constantly in that mode, you don't really have the time to step back and marinate and sort of, just like with writing, it helps to step back from a bit and revisit it. Art is the same way, and with a series, it takes time to develop your art style for just that series, and I've been able to do that for Fiendish. So I know that book 2 looks way better than book 1. I've heard great feedback on the story, and I'm just so proud of this work. And actually being able to like improve and do more.
Is there anywhere? Is there anywhere you like that you recommend people follow you online?
You can follow me on I'm Irene Draws everywhere. So Twitter, and also I have a YouTube channel. I do promotional streams for other comics, but also I do a lot of drawing streams. So if you enjoy that kind of stuff, then you can check it out. It's all fun stuff. It's all comics, and it's just like basically what we're doing here, but I draw at the same time. Right. And so it's good fun. And on Twitter, I post updates about my comic. I promote other people's comics, and occasionally I'll yell about Star Wars or something, but not that often. So don't be scared. And that's about it. And if you guys are interested in what we talked about today, you can check out Fiendish at fiendishcomic.com, and that'll link to like the Indiegogo and everything that has all the comic stuff on there.
Cool. Well, yeah, like Mike said, thank you for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. It was so great to chat with you guys.
You too. I guess Mike can go to the bathroom now or something. Go shovel. Go shovel. Show your wife how much you love her, and go shovel the driveway, Mike.
Okay.